everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks to the team over at Zavvi, we're going to be taking an early look at the upcoming Transformers Studio Series 8602 Deluxe Class KUP. Now, if you are in the market for adding KUP or any of the other 86 Studio Series figures to your collection, then of course I will leave a link down in the description box below where you can pre-order him and add him to your collection. Taking a look here firstly at the packaging, you can see that we have a fantastic window view display here of KUP as well as all of his accessories. We have an amazing piece of artwork there of him from the movie, as well as the astonishing Transformers 86 logo there. As we turn our attention here to the side of the packaging, once again we have a closer up image of the character with 8602. Once again, the 86 movie line is that of a subline to the Studio Series, so all of the figures will be 86 plus another number. As we turn our attention here to the back of the packaging, we have some fantastic product shots of KUP in both robot mode as well as vehicle mode. We also do have a very brief bio on the specific scene in which the backdrop is based upon. KUP struggles to free himself from the tentacles of a giant squid. And then finally, the other side of the packaging has a larger image of KUP with, of course, the 86 numbering there on the side. So without further ado, let's crack KUP open and see what awaits us inside. And so starting things off here firstly by taking a look at the included backdrop. Of course, it is based upon the scene from when KUP and Hot Rod are indeed on Quintessa, and KUP unfortunately does have a little bit of a scrap with that of a giant squid. I really do think that the artwork on this particular piece looks amazing, and just bringing KUP into the equation, you can see that in my opinion, I think that he stands really nicely with this as of course his backdrop. And believe me, when I do actually showcase one of KUP's later features in the review, fix me, this backdrop will definitely more than make sense as to why it has come packaged with this particular release. And turning to the main event himself, here we have the Studio Series 86 movie KUP, and I for sure do believe that once again Hasbro and Takara Tomy have done a commendable job in capturing his appearance from of course that of the 86 movie. There may be some discrepancies in terms of some of the proportions of the character, however for the most part comparing him to that of his on-screen character model, I really do believe that they have done a fantastic job. Taking a look at the detailings, I for sure believe that Hasbro and Takara Tomy have done a commendable job in capturing the essence of the character from the 86 movie. You can for sure more than tell that this figure is slightly more elderly than compared to some of the other Autobots and Decepticons, and that in my opinion is mainly down to the sculpt work that we do get going on here for the faceplate. I do believe that the paint applications have been applied impeccably well for the main face as well as for the helmet section, and the actual sculpt work that we can see present throughout the helmet does continue to not only the front but of course here to the side and of course the back. I am for sure more than welcoming of the return of light piping. You can see that this entire back section here is indeed a transparent piece, which when you do get light shining through it for sure brings this character to life. As we take a look there at the neck brace, this too has also got some fantastic detailings, and I am a huge fan of the transparent blue plastic that we have got going on here for the main torso, as well as the silver metallic paint application that we also do have underneath this. It really does bring the detailings to life and give some definition and depth to the character. As we take a look here to the sides of the arms, I think that the proportions for the most part look very accurate to what we see on the show, and you can see that in terms of the arms, I think that the sculpt work as well as once again the paint applications have come out really nicely. As we turn our attention here down to the lower section of the torso, we do have a really awesome looking Autobot insignia, and one thing to note is that the paint apps on this figure have been applied really nicely, so there are barely no paint bleeds whatsoever, which is really what you would expect from a modern day Hasbro release. As we take a look here towards the lower region, you can once again see that the sculpt work as well as paint applications do continue, and I am a huge fan of the sculpted in surface detailing that we have got going on here for the thighs as well as for the main shins of the figure. As we take a look here towards the base of the figure, you can see that once again the sculpt work does continue, and much like all of the other 86 movie figures, the kibble is to a bare minimum. You can see that this backpack section is indeed accurate to what we see in the movie, and the same can also be said here for the legs. Considering that the design of KUP's lower region in the movie was very similar to this, I personally do not see this as excess kibble whatsoever. In terms of articulation, the figure does have a ball joint here at the head, so this can look left to right as well as tilt side to side as well as look up and down. We do get a full 360-degree rotation here at the arm, and due to the nature of the design, we do get a fantastic hinge joint all the way up. We of course do get a full 360-degree rotation here at the bicep, as well as a very soft ratcheted elbow joint which can bend past 90 degrees, which in my opinion is a fantastic range of motion. We unfortunately do not get any wrist rotation, which in my opinion is something that they maybe could have implemented into this release, as this section is just hollow. We do get a full 360 rotation here at the waist. The legs can kick forwards that far as well as back to about that far, which is fantastic. He can also do the splits to a great degree. Full 360 rotation here at the thigh, as well as once again soft ratchet joints here at the knee which can bend to 90. And then finally taking a look here at the feet, due to transformation the toe can pivot forwards and backwards, and we do of course get some fantastic ankle rocker joints. So overall, in terms of detailing and articulation, I do think that this figure here is pretty much flawless. In terms of accessories, KUP does indeed come with two, the first of which is of course his blaster, and similarly to the actual figure himself, myself, I believe that the sculpt work looks really awesome, and once again is very faithful to what we see in the movie. This can peg into either of the 5mm ports that we do have here on the arm, and one of the accessories which I would not have expected to be released with this figure whatsoever, as really similarly to 86 Hot Rod, it is a scene specific accessory, is that of the Energon goodie dispenser. You can see here that once again the sculpt work as well as the paint applications have been applied really nicely. Personally, I maybe would have liked it if this could have been either cast in an entirely green plastic and then had this section here painted in purple, or if they could have cast it in purple plastic and then painted this section here in green. It really does confuse me as to why they opted to go with transparent clear plastic, but nonetheless you can for sure tell on what it is supposed to be, and similarly to the blaster, it simply does just peg into KUP's hand like so. Turning to one of the special features that this figure does indeed possess, very similar to that of the 86 Hot Rod, Hasbro have actually included a scene specific feature, which is something that in my opinion they did not have to include whatsoever, and that is actually giving you the option to dismember him, much like we see when he does have his confrontation with the huge giant alien squid. So just to demonstrate that, you simply take any of the arms or the legs and just pull them clean off this peg, and of course you can recreate that scene. Fix me! And once again, I think that that is a great use of this seam joint. This is something that they didn't have to include, but in my opinion just adds so much play value to this particular character. You could also go even further and attach blast effects onto these particular pieces in order to give you the illusion that these pieces are indeed being ripped off, or you could add some of the weaponizer joints in order to create for a rather funky looking design. I personally do think that this is an amazing feature and is one that for sure collectors and younger audience alike will love. Here for some size comparisons, we have KUP compared to some of the Netflix figures, Earthrise, and of course Siege figures, and for the most part I really do believe that the scale here works really nicely to what we see in both the show and of course the 86 movie, and you can see that in terms of a deluxe class comparison, he is for sure more than a substantial size, especially when comparing next to the Earthrise RC. He actually is roughly a head taller than that of RC, and one thing to note is that these 86 figures really do feel incredibly well built. There is barely any hollow gaps on this release whatsoever. The plastic is very dense, and I definitely do believe that Hasbro are going back to their old 2010 era of figures where they felt incredibly premium and perhaps not as light and flimsy as what we have got with some previous lines. And of course, what 86 movie KUP review would not be complete without a comparison between KUP and the Alicons. Offer them an Energon goodie. You can see here that I for sure believe that once again the scaling between these particular characters is really well done, and it really does baffle me as to why we are not seeing the Alicons in the actual Studio Series 86 line. I am rather puzzled as to why we did get them in Earthrise. I for sure do believe that some of these 86 characters are overflows from the War for Cybertron trilogy and are just figures that perhaps they would not have found a way to actually release in the near future without putting them in the Studio Series subline, but I for sure am more than happy, and I think that he looks fantastic when compared next to some of the Alicons. And so now, with robot mode completely covered, we can proceed into the transformation. Now, something worth noting that I may have mentioned in some of my previous 86 movie Studio Series reviews is that I for sure do believe that these figures are certainly a little bit more sophisticated than what we are used to from the War for Cybertron line, and I definitely do believe that the term mini masterpiece definitely does play very heavily into some of my thoughts on these particular releases. But to begin with, you're going to want to take KUP's head sculpt and rotate it all the way around so that the front is now facing the back. We can take this back piece and just extend this section, and then of course take this piece and bring that up. We're going to want to take the shoulder sections here and just untab those. They are held in via these small tabs and slots on either side. We can then of course repeat the same process here on the opposite sides. What I like to do here is take this section, and you're going to want to apply some pressure to this piece as well as to this piece, as this entire joint is going to wriggle out like so. It will actually stop. There is a certain point where this sculpted in section will groove. You do not want to force it past this, as you may actually damage the plastic. So once you do feel some resistance, that is your indication that you must stop. Of course, repeat the same process here on the opposite side. So just take this and extend this section. Once again, these pieces are held in very tightly. I wish that perhaps there was an easier way to actually extend those, but you're just going to want to swivel this all the way around, and once again you can see how that plastic does prevent you from going any further. With that now done, we can take the back section down, lift these up and bring the wheels all the way forwards. You're then going to want to take the neck brace, lift this section up, as we're then going to proceed to collapse this all the way in. It is on two joints, so there is one joint here and then a second joint in here. This entire piece will collapse down, and just to show you how that looks from a front perspective, you're going to want to ensure that it is compressed all the way down like so, which will then allow you to bring the head down, and then with this section, this will lift up. You'll then want to bring this over and snap that nice and securely into place. Bring the legs down all the way to allow for some clearance. As for here, you're going to bring the shoulder section down and bring this section here all the way around, and you can see that we do have a slot that this tab here will clip into, and then of course just bring that in nice and securely, ensuring that the arm is as straight as possible, and of course turning your attention here to the opposite side and repeat the exact same process. You just snap that into place, and then the arms more or less just rest here for the duration of the transformation. We can then turn our attention here to the legs, and this is for sure where I do believe that they have taken some inspiration from Masterpiece figures, as honestly I was not expecting this whatsoever. So you're going to want to bring this entire section down, hinge this section here out, and this tab will actually peg into a brand new dedicated slot which is specifically designed for vehicle mode. So once again, align this up appropriately, clip that into place, and you can just see the differences between how it should look for vehicle mode than as opposed to how it looks for robot mode. Of course, repeat the same process to hinge this section down and snap that nice securely into place. We can then take the feet, ensure that they are nice and aligned, and fold up the toes until they do clip into place. We can then bring this section here all the way over to the top, and you're going to want to extend this all the way down like so, and it will actually slide into place. So it is on a slider joint. This is how it will be for robot mode, and then for vehicle mode you are going to want to compress that. Once that's done, you can see that we do have a tab that will peg into this slot here, so just bring this over and align this up appropriately, clip that into place, and this section will fill out that slight gap that we saw earlier on. Just ensure that all of this is aligned up nice and appropriately. Come here to the opposite side and of course repeat the exact same process. So just extend this over the top, snap that into place. We can then take this section here and snap this side also into place. And with that said, what you'll do here is bring this down, and you can see that we do have a tiny tab that will actually peg into this slot. So just snap that in there. Of course, repeat the same process and snap that in there. We can then bring these pieces together and of course clip them into place just like so. And then finally, you can see that we do have 2 ports here on the hands. These are actually going to tab into these sections. That just helps to solidify this entire back region and will allow for enough clearance so that the figure can roll really well in vehicle mode. So once again, just align that up appropriately, give everything a nice squeeze, and here we have KUP fully transformed up into what appears to be a Cybertronian pickup truck. And once again, I believe this to be very accurate to what we see in the 86 movie. You can see for sure the detailings that we saw in robot mode, such as the transparent blue plastic with the silver highlights underneath it. The Autobot insignia, I think that it cleans up impeccably well. We've got the Autobot insignias here on the sides, as well as some nice paint applications here along the sides of the truck. As we take a look there for the wheels, we also do have some nice details. It is rather unfortunate that the plastic that we do get on this section can be seen through this piece. I maybe would have liked it if they could have painted that black. However, it's something that I'm pretty sure you'd be able to remedy with some black paint or perhaps some Sharpies. And then just giving you a bird's eye perspective, you can see that the actual back section of the truck, the main bed piece, I think cleans up really nicely, and overall there is barely no hollow gaps whatsoever. So once again, another fantastic release by Hasbro in their 86 assortment. The figure can also roll really well as well, which once again is fantastic. There is a millimeter of clearance where the front wheels are and this section is, so once again you will have to ensure that everything is tabbed in and aligned to a T, otherwise you will not get the figure free flowing along the ground. In terms of weapon storage, we can of course bring in the blaster, and you saw earlier on in the review that we do have a tab that will peg into this slot here, so just snap that into place and then bring in the Energon goodie dispenser, and once again that too does have a tiny tab that will just peg into there. So certainly not the best in terms of weapon storage. However, personally for me, I think that it is more than adequate, and honestly, in terms of robot mode as well as vehicle mode, I think this is potentially one of the best representations of KUP that we have ever gotten for a mainline release. And so, some final thoughts. Once again, another smash hit from Hasbro for their 86 movie line. I really do believe, as stated in some of my previous reviews, that the 86 movie figures are a major step up from their already amazing War for Cybertron figures. In terms of robot mode, there is no denying, at least in my personal opinion, that this is one of the best mainline representations that we have ever gotten for the character. Of course, there may be some discrepancies in terms of the proportions. However, in the show, there were inconsistencies in terms of the animation and how the characters actually looked. In some shots, the characters were a lot wider, they were a lot larger, they were a little bit more skinnier, they were smaller, they were taller. So personally, I think that this figure for the most part really does resemble to what we see on screen, and when comparing him to that of his character model, I personally do believe that it is pretty much spot on. In terms of articulation, he has all of the joints that I would want from that of a modern day Deluxe, other than the fact that unfortunately he doesn't include wrist rotation. However, that is something that I can easily look past. There is minimal kibble in the robot mode, all of which is pretty much accurate to once again what we see on screen. I think that he comes with a great range of accessories accessories. The Energon Goody Canister once again is a scene specific accessory that they didn't necessarily have to include, and whilst on the topic of scene specific, a feature which I definitely think was a great bonus is the fact that you can of course dismember some of the limbs in order to recreate that scene from the 86 movie from where he has his fight with the giant alien squid. I think that the transformation once again is very sophisticated, much like we have seen from some of the other 86 movie figures, and for the vehicle mode I think that once again it is a really nice representation to what we see on screen. So overall this figure for sure does get a high recommendation from me, and with all that being said, if you are in the market for picking this figure up, he is available to pre-order right now over at Zavvi, and for that of course I will leave a link down in the description box below. I want to say a huge thank you to Zavvi for providing me with the first wave of 86 movie deluxes for me to give you reviews of them, and be sure to stay tuned for some of my upcoming reviews. I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please do let me know down in the comment section below. I thank you all for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.